Hey musicians and music fans, this is Ari Koinuma for arikoinuma.com, and today I wanted to share with you my thoughts on Todd Sprocket's All I Want, which is probably the most popular song by one of my all-time music heroes. And the goal is to look at the four elements of music making that go into any music, which is songwriting, arrangement, performance, and production, and see how these four elements fit together to create this powerful piece of music. Okay, so here's how the verse and pre-chorus goes, something like this. Nothing so loud as hearing when we lie. Truth is not kind, and you said neither am I. And the air outside so soft, they say everything, everything. Alright, to start with the songwriting, this song is in the key of C or A minor. Actually, we don't know which one is really the central key, because the song kind of goes back and forth emphasizing both aspects. They are related keys, but it can sound happy or sad. But then in the intros, there's a couple bars of drum beats, simple drum beats, and then the song starts out actually in the D minor chord. So when the key is in A minor, but then when you start with D minor, it's kind of like there's not a sense of like arrival or like you're starting something. It just really feels like you're starting in the middle almost. And Glenn starts singing right away too, so there's not much of an intro there, and you just feel like you're entering a conversation in the middle, and something happened prior to that prompted this guy to have these thoughts, but we don't know what that is, and you just kind of sneak in the middle, which is an interesting songwriting approach. So from there, the chords goes D minor, and F, and C, and A minor. So just think about how that come across for a minute there. It just goes from minor up to major, and settle down to major, and then minor. And so at the end of it, you're feeling kind of left forlorn almost. It's just there's a sense of longing or vulnerability there. I don't know which comes first in the songwriting, the words or the harmony, but the harmony, just by listening to it, you get a particular feeling, and later on we'll see that the lyrics and everything else sort of support that same feeling as well. But if you look at the bass line of that chorus, it goes something like this. So the thing with music is that whenever a line goes up, it builds energy, and then when it comes down, it deflates or settles the energy. And you notice that this progression goes up first, and then comes down and comes down. So there's a sense of letdown in a way. And you repeat that 3 times, like a wave going up and down, up and down, up and down. And then it sort of firmly established that the guy is talking from a place of vulnerability and some kind of sadness or poignance, I would say, and that the chords express that all on their own perfectly. But after repeating those waves of letdown for 3 times, then the chords go into F, and then A minor and B flat for the end of the pre-chorus section. And then this B flat is an interesting chord there. It really doesn't belong in the key of C major, and the first chord of the chorus is the C major, so it's a moment of arrival in a way. But then to get there, it doesn't. It uses this out of key chord, which is flat 7, and this flat 7 chord is, in my book, something like a defiance chord. When you go, there's not a sense of as strong of a sense of a resolution as going something like that. But then when you go from like that, there's a much bolder, more aggressive feeling of going up. It's almost forceful in a way. and that so the verse and pre-chorus sets up harmony-wise this sense of longing and letdown, but then towards the chorus it lifts up into something much ballsier and then has a sense of arrival coming into the chorus. Okay, so the chorus goes something like this. All I want is to feel this way, to be this close, to feel the same. All I want is to feel this way. The evening speaks, I feel it saying. Alright, so despite arriving triumphantly at the C major chord in the beginning of the chorus doesn't stay that happy either. So it goes from C down to A minor, so immediately it's just deflating that sense of confidence, and then going up to D minor, the longing, and then it goes to G, which sets up the C major in a nice way this time, and then goes to C, A minor, D minor, and then goes to E, which is an interesting chord, and then finally ending up in F. The chorus just has a bit of an uneven length the second time, but that E chord is usually sets up the A minor in the A minor key. It's really not in the key, you have to sort of raise the seventh there, but you know, that sort of cadence, right? But then instead of going straight up to A minor, it goes to F, which is kind of a false cadence, and it really creates this sense of open-endedness, right? Nothing is resolved, but then you feel like there's a question hanging in there. And Todd is really a master of subtlety in this, you know, sort of songwriting, in that what they do is not something like really off-the-wall avant-garde, sort of ear-catching new, but yet they know how sort of these chords sort of fit together to create a particular feeling, and they sort of align everything from the words to performance to arrangements sort of to support that. So it just really comes up feeling very emotional in a way. Well, I don't know if emotional is the right word, but it just sounds very dramatic and impactful, I would call it. Anyway, so the point of that chorus is that it just arrives strong, but then you're still unsure, and then it goes up to finally have a sort of open cadence at the end. Alright, moving on, the bridge part goes something like this. It starts on G. And it won't matter now, whatever happens will be, for the air speaks, so more will never be. It won't trouble me. Yeah, it ends on D minor, back to the verse. So the bridge is the boldest and loudest and most forceful part of the song, and it's reflected in the harmony because it's mostly major chords. It goes from G and then briefly to A minor, G and F, and then C, G and F, and C, G, and here's the interesting chord, D. The chord of D is not in the key of C or A minor at all either, but it just creates a sense of uplift and a nice color there, settling back down into F at the end, which is the open-ended chord, the question chord, right? And then it goes back to D minor this time, feeling insecure again for the verse, which is the guitar solo part. So harmonically, there's nothing that's like really too weird or ear-catching about it, but yet they sprinkle like a interesting chord in like once per section, and then that creates just enough color and sort of a twist or unexpectedness to make the song feel really fresh and exciting, even after listening to it many times. So that's a really deft touch as a songwriter there. Alright, so let's look at the melody next. I'm gonna play, I sang it before, but I'll play it on the guitar for you, how it goes. So he starts out singing really low in his range, right? And which is it's a classic songwriting device. Is you start low and have some place to go up later in the song when you really want to lay it on. Notice there's a big jump there though. That sort of jump in the line sort of is designed to catch your attention, and that it goes has a big jump up and then it kind of comes down. So again, it's sort of repeating the up and down sort of a shape of the underlying chord there. But then in the next section, although the chord doesn't change, the melody just jumps up in the range, right? It's something like a. So, being down here and then that next going up there, the song increases in dramatic intensity, and that's what sets up the chorus there. And then there's another big jump there as well. It goes. Again, it's a big jump, and it's at the sort of the higher end of Glenn's range there, and then that sort of a jump really sort of catches your attention. When you're writing melody, you want to balance out the big jumps and more stepwise motions, because if you do too many big jumps, then the big jump becomes norms and the melody can feel really jagged. But then if you do like a stepwise motions, then the song becomes predictable and monotonous. So having a mix of big jumps with more stepwise motion usually works the best, and that's another example there. There's attention getting sort of an interval in the middle of the melody, and then your eye catches, or your ears catch that when he does that. All right, in the chorus, it goes something like this. So actually, if you play it by just the melody itself, the chorus actually isn't that interesting, right? It goes. It's really low in range. So what they do is they create they do something else to keep it interesting, which is the classic songwriting technique of call and response, and you harmonize the first end because it's low with a higher note, so it sounds nice and thick, and then Glenn's lead vocal is the response. And it really works. It just has a sense of arrival. It has the stacked harmony to deliver the punchline, and then the melodic line of Glenn's lead vocal response to that. And following that with the bridge, there's another big jump there also. So there's the big jump again at the beginning, and then the melody winds down, and it just sort of matches the intensity of the chords underneath in the bridge, and it's one of the higher notes in Glenn's range, so he gets a little raspy and intense, and that's what makes this bridge part really dramatic. All right, so switching gear to the lyrics, as popular and catchy as this song is when you actually look at the lyrics, it's actually fairly vague. I was kind of surprised, but all I want is to feel this way is like about the simplest line in the whole song, and everything else is fairly abstract and ambiguous. It seems like each section is really matching what a harmony is really depicting, in that the verses are low, but also talks about things that are not great, things that are vulnerable and fragile. But then in the pre-choruses, he talks about, but the air outside is saying everything, or the air outside seems to be like a God figure or higher being or spiritual guidance, sort of telling this character that there is something else going on, that there's something else to look for. And then the chorus is about the character's desire to feel close, to connect to somebody really closely and intimate way. And it really ends up, again, open-ended, because the evening speaks and I feel it say, but we don't know what it says. We just have to kind of make guesses from the gesture. I imagine that it's saying something very affirming and comforting, but we don't know. And therein lies the sense of mystery and maturity in songwriting of Toad. It's just that there's a lot of room for interpretation. You have a fairly clear idea of what's going on, at least emotionally, but you can insert many different sort of stories to this kind of song, and that's one of the reasons why it doesn't get so tiring, even if you listen to it many times, is that it's not spoon-feeding you something concrete. It just leaves you lots of room to explore and think about. So after going back and forth between verse and chorus, being vulnerable and then proclaiming your desires, the bridge, of course, is the most boldest proclamations, and he makes pretty strong assertions there. So there is clearly a story here in that the guy starts out from a sense of vulnerability, and then he realizes what he's wanting all along, and in the bridge he lets go of that, and then finally comes to a point of arrival where he's taking in the things that he were looking for. And so the progression and the change in character keeps the song interesting, but at the same time there's a lot of room for interpretation in this song. The song is not specific enough to really sort of tell a concrete story, so you can insert a lot of your own life story into this song. And that's part of the enduring appeal of a song like this, is that when the song doesn't spoon feed you with lots of concrete things, you don't get tired of it as much, and that you feel more emotionally invested because you have to sort of make up your own meaning of the song. Okay, arrangements-wise, Toad is the master of understatedness, and that they make very use of the things that they have at their disposal. It again starts out with simple drum beat, and then acoustic guitar and bass coming under the verse in the beginning. You notice that while the acoustic guitar and the drums are fairly laid back and generic, the bass has a particular presence, in that the Dean seems to be really driving the song, and he's filling up the space there, and you can kind of see, you can kind of speculate that might be like the band dynamics as well. Players' personalities come out in how they play the part, or what kind of parts they come up with, and that Dean's bass is a very important figure in this arrangement because there's not much going on to keep your interest. And then, as a guitar player, I have to say that Todd's lead guitar part is very sort of underappreciated. He is a master of texture, and he's sort of playing along on his electric guitar what the chords are, but then he inserts these colorful notes here and there to keep it subtly interesting. And that if you listen to the intro to the second verse, that's him playing what he would play behind Glenn's singing. But by itself, it's actually quite listenable. It's melodic, and it's fun to listen to. And he's great at coming up with subtle song supporting parts like that. So really well done there. There is an organ in the background coming into the chorus, and particularly in the bridge and solo section, and that's just there to sort of fill it up in the background. It's pretty far in the background, so you might not notice it. But if it's not there, the song will feel a little bit more empty or raw, and then the organ kind of comes in and sort of filling the rest of the space and kind of sort of sweeten things up. The one place where the organ does take a prominent role is that during the guitar solo, if you listen to it, you can't tell if it's a guitar solo or organ solo, and I think actually there's both going on there and perfectly synchronized, so they sound like they're like one voice instead of two voices playing the same line. And that I think, this is purely speculation, but Todd's always sort of struck me as fairly shy and again understated about his parts, and he doesn't want to really sort of take the spotlight with like a lengthy guitar solo or anything like that. So he kind of, I don't know, in the production they decided that they should double his line because it's just a simple melody with the organ to make it sound a little bit more interesting. I would argue that it's perfectly possible to make a guitar playing simple melody perfectly interesting. If you listen to like Kurt Cobain's guitar solos, they're all simple melodies, and I will listen to them all day. But in this case, the organ, sort of come and share the spotlight with the electric guitar during the solo. All right, so next I'll talk about the performance a little bit. performances again where players really express themselves, and you can kind of start to see the player's personality in how they play their part. Like I said, Randy, the drummer, comes across to me like a no-nonsense, no BS kind of guy, just really sticking to fairly traditional drum parts, but doing it really well, and not overplaying at all. Whereas Dean is like the drive of the band, and his line is always filling up the space. He's not hiding behind the drums. It always comes across like he is leading the drums, and I think his part is slightly ahead of the beat, and that gives that sense that the bass is pulling the drums. And then, of course, like I said, Todd is fairly subdued and just plays his part very sort of stays in the background. And even when it's his solo time, he doesn't just come across like he's really sort of expressing himself and letting us see him, but instead he's just playing the part with the organ. And that's kind of how the band plays. But Glenn on this album particularly was kind of a sort of a transformation in a way. In his early 2 albums, he was very much a baritone, and his voice was really low and dark. But in Fear, in many places, his voice is a lot brighter, and he goes higher, and he can even get a little raspy. And that it's like a broadening of the emotional range, and he's a master at matching like the right range and right vocal sounds to say the right words with the right harmony. So again, as we saw, the verse is low and dark and confessional, whereas the pre-chorus goes up and it's talking about longing, and then in the chorus and bridge goes higher, and he's talking about the strongest feelings there. So it's really fun to listen to how Glenn transitions from one sort of a character to the next, or gives the character a sense of drama by really going from one range and one sound to next, and sort of seamlessly transitioning through the song. Alright, and then in the end I'm going to talk about the production. Production is done by Gavin MacKillop, a British producer who's produced Toad's 3 most famous albums in the 90s, The Fear and Dulcinea and Coil. And that if you listen to the songs, the recordings before and after that era, you can clearly tell that there's like a Gavin MacKillop sound to those recordings. And one of the signature thing that he did was the reverb. Toad's albums always had reverb, and that created like a sense of murky darkness in the first 2 albums, but then in the 3rd album and then the 2 albums after that, the reverb just creates this balance between the sense of mystery. You hear the reverb and it's kind of dense, so you feel the parts being sort of blanketed in the reverb, but also there's a little bit more clarity, and you can hear everything. Whereas if you listen to the recordings, the modern recordings that Toad did in the 21st century, the reverb is a lot slicker and brighter, and that's something took me aback a little bit when I first listened to the newer recordings. But this reverb on this recording is just like classic Toad, and that if it's not something you notice when you listen to it, but then if it's not there, then you're like, oh, well, that doesn't sound the same. And so it's one of the signature sounds that I hear in the production here. Alright, the other thing I would say about production in the 90s in general is that the 90s was an era when we had the most advanced analog recording equipment before things started converting to digital. And so it doesn't have all the sort of what should I say, the limitations of the recording devices that were present in the earlier era. You get the most honest but still analog sound of the music from the 90s, and that's something that I really am fond of, because digital recording can sound really impersonal and artificial, as convenient as it is to work with. So the 90s recording and this one in particular has that sort of organic feel to it, and part of the other reason contributing to the organic feel is that not all parts are compressed a lot. Now compression is a process in which you know, a lot of the times when you hear a musical instrument or somebody talking or singing, there's a lot of difference in the volume from loud to the soft part. But then you use the compression to even them out so they all come across at the same volume. And all popular music recordings have tons of compression, and that's why everything sounds so even. But in this recording, the compression is not so consistently done. If you listen to, for example, the acoustic guitar part, you can tell that some strumming attacks are louder and some are softer, and that creates a sense of honesty in a way. When everything is perfectly sort of level in terms of the volume, it creates a more sort of a polished, produced feel. Whereas when there is a bit of a variation in the volume, where you hear it sometimes and sometimes you don't, that creates more lifelike feel, and that's always a balancing act in the production. The one curious thing I would mention about the way the song is mixed is that actually, if you listen to it with headphones, it becomes obvious. But all the instruments are placed fairly much, pretty much in the middle of the stereo field. It's become a sort of a standard for like a rock, guitar-based bands to have like guitars, pan hard left and right, so you hear it, like way off to the side. And then of course vocals and drums and bass and all those instruments are kind of in the middle. But with this one, there is acoustic guitar somewhat off to the side, but it's really not prominent at all, and then everything else is kind of in the middle. And this creates a sense of intimacy that we've been talking about. It's a bigger soundscape to have the stereo field taken up all the way to the edge with instruments. But again, that sounds bigger. And when everything is sort of in one place, you just get more personal, contained sort of feel to it, and that's adding to the sense of intimacy or the confessional aspect of this recording. Alright, thanks for watching. That's all I have to say about Todd the Wet Sprocket's All I Want. I hope this enhanced your appreciation of the song, or you learned something new that you didn't know before. I certainly did. Todd is one of my all-time music heroes, and it still amazes me how after 25 years I listen to these songs like very regularly, and I don't get tired of it, and I still relate to it, and I sing along, and I have a great time. So I learned something from looking at the song and scrutinizing bits and pieces for my own music, and that I hope you got something out of it too. Anyway, thank you again for watching, and I'll catch you next time.